Joining us now to discuss Republican strategist Ash Wright. Ash, tell us your assessment. Is there going to be this red wave? Are people getting too caught up in this narrative?
No, absolutely. I think that all signs are pointing towards a red wave. If you look at what's happening in most of the swing states, Pennsylvania, Georgia, et cetera, Republicans are surging. A lot of that is based on economic issues. Voters are ultimately turning back to their pocketbooks to vote, which is what we've seen in the past. In most midterm elections, they tend to go against the sitting incumbent party. And what we're seeing is it took longer this cycle than normal for voters to get back there, but they're turning away from social issues like abortion, et cetera, and turning more to where they're voting their pocketbooks and voting for the safety of their children, et cetera. And so I do expect a large wave. I'm really surprised and excited in Oregon. I think Walker, obviously, in Georgia has a really good shot at winning outright or at least making a runoff and forcing a runoff there. And Dr. Oz is sitting in really good shape. And so I think all things considered, as voters go to the polls and begin to say that their most important issue is economics, that fares very well for Republicans.
Yeah, and Ash, you mentioned the Pennsylvania Senate race. I do want to look at that. Dr. Mehmet Oz with a 3% lead over John Fetterman at this point, 48% to 45%. How much of that do you think is a result of that very widely discussed debate, or do you think it's because of other reasons?
Well, I mean, I think it's a mixture. I think the debate kind of brought it all to light, which is very good for Dr. Oz. But as you look at the counties that matter, so I mean, when you look at the suburban areas, Delaware County, et cetera, that are just kind of north of the Philadelphia area or Allegheny County, typically those counties have performed well for Democrats. They're not polling that well this cycle. And what we're seeing is, as we saw in 2018, for an example, is women voters turned against Trump in those areas and turned towards Democrats. This cycle, they're turning towards a message of security for their families, economic security for their families. And so as Democrats lose in those strongholds and drop support, and it's really faring well for Republicans. And you also have to consider it's not just necessarily about voter turnout in each of those areas. A lot of times it's the lack of voter turnout on the Democrat side that actually ultimately benefits the Republicans. And so as you see hard Democrats not show up to the polls or independents not show up to the polls, but they are for Republicans, that's faring very well for Dr. Oz. And I think he'll actually win by a little bit more than 3%.
All right, let's take a look at another race. This one, Arizona Governor CenturyLink polling at 54%, Democrat Katie Hobbs at 43%. You know, months ago, I don't think anybody would have predicted these kinds of numbers.
Absolutely. You know, as you look at Arizona, when Biden, and this is a border state, as you know, and border issues are popular there. So when Biden, you know, removed a lot of the implementation of policies that Trump had put in, you know, like the stay in Mexico while you're seeking asylum in the U.S., et cetera, Arizona's seen over a 30% increase in migrant encounters. And that's really performing well. And that's another top issue that voters are looking at. It all feeds back into the security, economic security, you know, personal security, et cetera. And so I think she has a very good chance and is likely to win there.
And before we let you go, in Georgia, that race, Raphael Warnock is trailing Republican candidate Herschel Walker 43 to 48%. But we did see former President Barack Obama stumping this weekend in Georgia, making some very interesting references about Herschel Walker, touting his incredible football records, but saying, is that the kind of guy you'd trust to pretty much do anything else besides be a football star?
Well, I mean, look, Walker's done very well. He's shown up in the debates. He's made some very good points. I think he's proven to Americans that he's more than just a football player. I think that's tried to be the message, but a lot of that message just doesn't fold when Warnock doesn't have anything to defend his own issues for, his own party for. And so, you know, some of it is a lack of Warnock being able to stand on Democrat issues, whereas Walker is able to go in. He's talking about real change in debates. He's making real initiatives and talking about real initiatives. And what's interesting is if you look at the early vote numbers that are coming out of Georgia, typically Democrats perform very well in absentee and early vote numbers, and then Republicans make it up on Election Day. But Walker is actually performing better than expected in early vote and absentee ballots. Yeah. And a lot of that is a lack of message coming out from the Warnock campaign.
All right, Ash Wright, thanks for breaking it down for us. I'm sure we'll be talking to you again. Thank you.
Thank you.